The door didn't just close behind me, it slammed like a verdict. For a moment, I stood there on the porch, my breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, as if my body had not yet understood what had been done to me. The sound of it echoed down the narrow Kansas street, sharp and final, and no one pretended not to hear it. I had been thrown out, not sent away, not asked to leave, thrown out like something broken, like something that had failed its purpose and no longer deserved to take up space. I waited. I don't know why. Perhaps I thought he would open the door again, that there would be a word, anger even, that might make it feel less final. But nothing came. No footsteps, no hesitation, only silence pressing against the wood from the other side. I looked down at my hands, empty. Then at the small bundle sitting at my feet. That was all he had allowed me to take. A dress, a shawl, a little bread I had wrapped myself when his back was turned. My life reduced to something I could carry in one hand. A woman across the road had stopped sweeping. She leaned on her broom, watching me without shame. Others watched too, I could feel it. Curtains shifting, doors half open. A small town doesn't need words when something like this happens. It understands quickly. It remembers longer. No air, no sun, no reason to keep me. He had made sure they all knew. The wind came sharp across the flats, cutting through the thin fabric at my sleeves. Early cold, too early. The kind that warned of a hard winter coming sooner than anyone was ready for. I bent, picked up my bundle, and straightened slowly. My knees felt unsteady, but not from grief. Not yet. That would come later, I suspected. What I felt now was something else entirely. Displacement. Like I had been lifted out of my own life and set down somewhere unfamiliar without warning. I turned away from the house. I did not knock. Some things, once done, do not leave room for return. I understood that with a clarity that surprised me. That door would not open again, not for apology, not for pleading, not even for anger, only for someone else. I stepped down onto the dirt road, my boots pressing into the hardened earth. Each step felt uncertain at first, like I was learning how to walk again without permission. The town stretched ahead of me in dull colors. Weathered wood, thin smoke rising from chimneys, the slow creak of a wagon somewhere out of sight. Life continued with a stubborn steadiness, as if I had not just been erased from it. I walked, because standing still would have meant turning back. And I would not beg to be let inside a place where I had already been judged and found lacking. The road dipped low past a stand of cottonwoods, their bare branches rattling together in the wind like dry bones. I pulled my shawl tighter, but the cold slipped through anyway, patient and thorough. There was nowhere to go. That truth settled slowly, like weight pressing down on my chest. No family within reach, no savings to speak of, no neighbor who would take me in without expecting something in return I could not give. Only the open land, and the coming winter. I told myself I would find shelter, a barn, a shed, something with a roof. I told myself I would manage. But the sky was already dimming, the gray deepening toward something darker, and the air carried that particular stillness that comes before the first real freeze. I kept walking. By the time I heard the wagon, dusk had settled in. The sound came slow and uneven, the creak of old wood, the dull thud of a warped wheel. I stiffened, stepping off the road into the brittle grass without thinking. Men on the road could be as dangerous as the cold. I turned only when it was close enough that I had to. The wagon rounded the bend, pulled by a thin horse with ribs showing through its. The man driving it looked much the same, worn, lean, and weathered by work that did not forgive weakness. His eyes found me immediately. They moved over me once, quick and assessing. Not curious, not kind. Measuring. He slowed, then stopped. For a moment, we said nothing. The wind filled the space between us, carrying the smell of river mud and dry grass. "You planning to make it somewhere before dark?" he asked. His voice was rough but steady. I lifted my chin slightly. "I'll manage." It was pride speaking, the last piece of something I wasn't ready to let go of. He studied me another second, then shook his head once. "No," he said plainly. "You won't." The truth of it landed without cruelty. He shifted on the seat, glancing toward the fading light. "I've got a place," he said. "Not much. Too many mouths already." His gaze returned to mine. "I don't take on charity." Good, I thought. Neither do I. "But if you can work," he added, "you can stay." The wind pressed cold against my back. The road behind me stretched empty, and for the first time since that door had closed, something shifted inside me. Not hope, not yet, but the smallest edge of possibility. "What kind of work?" I asked. He let out a short breath. "The kind that keeps people alive through winter." Then, after a pause, "You getting in, or are you planning to freeze, proving a point?" I looked once over my shoulder, then I climbed onto the wagon, and I did not look back again. The wagon groaned forward the moment I settled onto the edge of the seat, as if it had been waiting on my decision. I didn't sleep that first night, not properly. I lay on a narrow pallet near the stove, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and old wool, listening to the house breathe around me. The wind pressed against the walls in slow, steady waves, slipping through cracks I could not yet see, whispering along the floorboards. The children slept in uneven patterns. The youngest whimpered once, then sat. The boy by the door, Thomas, I had heard Ethan call him, woke twice without making a sound, just shifting, checking, then lying still again. The older girl never seemed to fully rest. I could feel it, even without looking. A tension that stayed awake no matter how still her body lay. And Ethan? He did not come inside until late. I heard him moving outside long after the others had gone quiet. Wood being shifted. Something dragged across the yard. Work done in the dark because there was no time left in the day. When he finally entered, he didn't speak. Just added one piece of wood to the fire, checked the latch on the door, and lay down fully clothed on a bench near the wall. No wasted motion, no wasted warmth. By morning, I understood something clearly. This house wasn't failing all at once. It was wearing down, piece by piece. The cold woke me before the light did. The fire had burned low to ash, leaving only a dull heat that barely held the room above the edge of freezing. My breath showed faint in the air when I sat up. No one else had risen. I watched them for a moment. 5 children. Too thin. Not starving, not yet, but close enough that I could see it in their faces. In the way their limbs rested heavy, like movement cost more than it should. I stood quietly. The floor was cold under my feet, even through my boots. I moved to the stove, crouched, and studied it before touching anything. The ash bed was thick, too thick. It choked the airflow. I found the small iron shovel nearby and began clearing it carefully, setting aside what could still hold heat. Then I checked the wood pile beside the stove. Small pieces, uneven cuts, burned too fast. I chose 2 of the denser logs and set them properly, leaving space between for air to move. It was a small thing, but small things mattered when there wasn't enough of anything. The fire caught slowly, then steadied. I stayed there until it did. Behind me, I heard movement. "Don't waste it." The voice was quiet, but sharp. I turned. The older girl stood near the table, arms crossed, watching me with the same guarded expression from the night before. "I'm not," I said. She stepped closer, eyes flicking to the stove, then back to me. "We don't burn big pieces in the morning. They go too fast." "They go too fast if they're set wrong," I replied. She didn't answer immediately, just watched, testing. I stepped aside slightly. "Come look." She hesitated, then moved closer despite herself. Her gaze dropped to the fire, narrowing as she took in the spacing, the way the flame pulled between the logs instead of around them. "It'll hold longer," I said. "Less smoke, more heat." She glanced at me again, not convinced, but not dismissing it either. "What's your name?" I asked. "Eliza?" It came quick, automatic, like she hadn't meant to give it. "Emma," I said, though she already knew. A smaller voice piped up from behind her. "Is there food?" The youngest boy, Samuel, I remembered, stood rubbing his eyes, hair sticking in all directions. Eliza stiffened slightly. "We'll see," she said. I was already moving. The shelf by the wall held what little they had: a sack of flour, nearly empty, a jar with a thin layer of lard, a handful of dried beans. Not enough. Not if used the way it had been. I picked up the beans, weighing them in my hand. "We'll cook these," I said. Eliza frowned. "That's for tonight." "It's for survival," I answered. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, because she didn't know if I was wrong. Neither did I. But I knew this: waiting too long to eat was as dangerous as eating too much too soon. "We stretch it," I continued. "Add water, thicken with flour. It won't be much, but it'll be warm." Warm mattered, more than full. Behind us, the others were waking now, slow, quiet, watchful. Ethan stepped in last, carrying an armful of wood. He paused when he saw the fire, then looked at me. Not measuring. "You started early," he said. "Yes." His gaze shifted to the stove again, then to the small pot I had set. He nodded once. "Good." That was all, but it was enough. Because in that single word, I heard something I had not been given in a long time. Not approval, not kindness, but acknowledgement. And in this house, that was how belonging began. By the third day, I understood the rhythm of the house, not because anyone explained it, because if I didn't learn it quickly, things would begin to fail. The mornings came cold and quiet, with just enough light pushing through the thin window to show what needed doing. The fire had to be rebuilt before anyone spoke. Water had to be brought in before it froze along the edges of the bucket. Food, what little there was, had to be stretched before hunger turned sharp. No one told me where anything belonged, but I watched. I noticed how Eliza measured flour with care that bordered on fear. How Thomas checked the door latch twice before stepping away. How the younger ones hovered near the stove, drawn to warmth like something they didn't trust would last. And Ethan. He worked until there was nothing left in him, then worked a little more. The land near the river gave them trouble. I could see it even before I walked it myself. The ground stayed damp longer than it should have, holding cold instead of releasing it. The fence leaned where the soil had shifted. Tracks of water marked where spring floods had cut too close to the house. Everything here required watching. Everything here could slip if ignored. On the fourth morning, I stepped outside before Ethan did. The air bit harder now. Not just cold, heavy. The kind that settled low and stayed there, warning that winter wasn't coming slowly anymore. It was closing in. I walked the yard first. The wood pile was wrong. Not in size, there was little enough of it, but in how it had been stacked, loose, uneven. Air moving where it shouldn't, moisture settling in. It would rot faster like that, or freeze together in a way that made it useless when needed most. I set my hands to it without asking, pulled it down, restacked it tighter, angled slightly to shed what little moisture came through. Larger pieces at the base, smaller, quicker burning wood kept close to the door. Work like that doesn't look like much until it matters. Behind me, I heard boots on the ground. "You're moving it wrong," Ethan said. I didn't turn right away. "No," I answered, shifting another piece into place. "It was wrong before." Silence followed. Not angry. Thinking. I stood and faced him then, wiping my hands on my skirt. "If it freezes like that," I said, nodding toward the pile, "you'll spend half your strength breaking it loose instead of burning it." He looked at it. Really looked. Then at me. "You done this before?" Yes. That was all I gave him. It was enough. He stepped closer, nudged one of the lower logs with his boot, testing the weight of it. The way it settled. "Show me," he said. So I did. We worked without speaking after that, piece by piece. The children drifted out one by one, drawn by the sound of movement. Samuel tried to lift a log too big for him and nearly dropped it on his foot. Thomas corrected him without words, just a quick shove of the right-sized piece into his hands. Eliza watched from the doorway, still not trusting, but no longer dismissing. By midday, the pile stood different, stronger. It would last longer. That mattered. Inside, I turned my attention to the rest. The floor held damp near the door. It would freeze if left. I found old cloth, laid it down to catch the moisture. The table wobbled, one leg shorter than the others. I folded a strip of worn fabric and wedged it tight beneath. Small fixes, quiet ones, but each one took strain off something else. That evening, when the wind rose higher and pressed harder against the walls, the house held a little steadier. Not much, but enough to feel. We ate the same thin meal as before, beans stretched with water, a little flour stirred in to thicken it. No one complained. But I noticed something. They ate slower, less urgency, as if the warmth in it mattered more than the amount. After, Eliza gathered the bowls. She paused beside me. "You changed the fire," she said. "Yes." "It lasted longer today." It wasn't a question. "No smoke in the morning either," she added. I nodded. She shifted her weight slightly. Then, quieter. "Show me tomorrow." Not a request, not quite, but close. I met her eyes. "Tomorrow," I agreed. That night, as I lay back on the pallet, listening to the wind test the walls again, I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to feel yet. I was no longer just staying. I was becoming part of the balance. And in a place like this, balance was the only thing standing between survival and losing everything all over again. I kept my hands folded tight in my lap, not touching anything that wasn't offered. The wood beneath me was rough, worn smooth only where years of use had pressed it down. The horse leaned into its harness without needing to be told, slow but steady, like it understood there was no sense wasting strength. We didn't speak right away. The road stretched ahead in long, quiet lines, the last of the daylight thinning into a dull gray that swallowed detail. Wind moved low across the fields, flattening what little grass remained. I could feel the cold settling deeper now, not sharp anymore, but steady, persistent, the kind that stayed. "You got a name?" he asked after a while. "Emma." He nodded once, as if that was enough. "Ethan." No handshake, no ceremony, just two names laid down between us like tools we might need later. I glanced sideways at him. Up close, the wear on him showed more clearly. Lines cut deep around his mouth, not from age alone, but from the habit of holding things in. His coat was patched in 3 places I could see, without looking hard. His hands, resting loose on the reins, were cracked and dark with ground-in dirt that no washing ever quite removed. A working man. A tired one. "You said too many mouths," I said carefully. "I did." "How many?" He shifted slightly, eyes still on the road. 5. "Children, then." I let that settle. "And no one to keep them in order," he added after a beat, like it was an afterthought he hadn't meant to say out loud. Something in his tone told me otherwise. The wagon dipped as we left the main road, turning onto a narrower path that cut down toward lower ground. I could smell water before I saw it, that damp, heavy scent of riverbank mud and rotting reeds. "Floods in spring," he said, following my glance. "Takes what it wants if you don't stay ahead of it." "And do you?" I asked. He gave a short breath that might have been a laugh if it had held any humor. "Some years." That was answer enough. The house came into view slowly, as if it didn't want to be seen all at once. Low, worn, leaning just enough to suggest it had been standing longer than it should have without proper repair. The yard was more mud than ground, churned by feet and hooves alike. A broken fence leaned inward, not keeping anything in or out. There was light in one window, faint, unsteady. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin and inconsistent. Not enough heat, not enough fuel. The wagon rolled to a stop. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the door opened. A boy stepped out first, thin, maybe 10 or 11, shoulders already set in a way that didn't belong to a child. He looked at me immediately, not at Ethan, at me, measuring. Behind him, 2 smaller children crowded the doorway, one clutching the other's sleeve. A girl, hair uncombed, eyes wide. Another boy, younger, watching without blinking. And farther back, near the table, I saw movement. An older girl. She didn't come forward. She stood still, her posture stiff with something that looked a lot like refusal. Ethan climbed down from the wagon. "She's staying," he said simply. No explanation, no softening. The boy outside frowned. "We don't need—" "Yes," Ethan cut in, not raising his voice. "We do." Silence settled, quick and heavy. The wind pushed at my back, urging me forward whether I was ready or not. I climbed down slowly, my boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The mud clung immediately, thick and cold around the edges. No one came to help me. I didn't expect them to. The boy stepped aside, but not far, just enough to let me pass if I chose to. I did. Inside, the air was warmer, but only just. The kind of warmth that came from effort, not abundance. A small fire burned in the stove, its heat uneven, struggling against the drafts that slipped through gaps in the walls. The room smelled of damp clothes, wood smoke, and something faintly sour, food stretched too far past its time. I set my bundle down near the door. No one spoke. The younger children stared openly now. The older girl still hadn't moved. Her eyes were sharp, guarded, waiting for me to prove something, or fail. Ethan stepped in behind me, shutting the door with less force than before, but with the same final sound of wood meeting frame. "You work," he said, not looking at me. "You eat." I nodded once. "That's fair." It was more than fair. It was survival. And as I stood there, in that dim, crowded room with strangers who did not want me, I understood something clearly. I had not been rescued. I had been given a chance to be useful. And whether I stayed would depend entirely on what I did next. The first real storm came without warning. The morning had started like the others, cold, quiet, manageable. The sky hung low, but that meant little on the plains. Weather turned fast here. You learned not to trust what looked calm. By midday, the wind shifted. I felt it before I saw it. A deeper push against the house. Not just movement, but pressure. The kind that searched for weakness. Found it. By the time the light began to fade, the sky had gone from gray to something darker, thicker, pressing down over the land like a lid. Ethan came in early. That alone told me enough. "Storm's turning," he said, setting down a bundle of cut wood harder than needed. "Colder than it should be." Eliza looked toward the window. "Snow?"